This is a Dalarna University production.
Okay, thanks very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Like most countries, the United Kingdom made a decision a few years ago that all schools, all government schools, would be using a learning platform to enhance their education. The reason behind this was that they wanted the boundaries of the classroom to be torn down for children to be able to access information and collaborate and work independently online out of school hours, and also that parents and other people should be able to see what children are doing. That was the dream and was put in place. And I worked with a group of two educational charities that run a number of schools, and we dutifully implemented this initiative in the way that the government said that it should be implemented. But at some time we thought, actually, we better have a look and see what's going on here. So we decided that we would ask the students how they were using the learning platform, how well was it working for them, and to see what lessons we could learn from this and to see if anything unexpected would turn up. So there's two groups of schools that we have in this project. One is a group of independent schools, mainly middle-class independent schools, co-educational, right across the UK, predictably from leafy suburbs. The other group of schools from the United Learning Trust, which I'm also the director for the ICT and e-learning, and these are from areas of high socioeconomic deprivation. So these are dysfunctional schools that have been shut down and have been failing, and have been reopened and re-energised with new technology, new senior leadership, new curriculum and so forth. So we've got quite a broad demographic right across this group, from the middle class through to those areas in those areas of poverty. And geographically they go right from the north in Sunderland down to the south in Bournemouth. I'm from Australia originally, so I'm just showing off my knowledge of English geography here. And from the east in Ashford through to the west in Swindon. So it covers quite a broad demographic and geographic area. And the findings from the research that we undertook with the students was fairly consistent, irrespective of the background or the demographic of where they were coming from. So these are the schools and academies that took part. We had 1,000 students, which was a pretty good sample, who took part. All of the students were invited to take part. That's 45,000. Now, bearing in mind that our schools go from the age of 3 through to the age of 18, you would expect the response to be skewed accordingly. So we did invite all the children to participate, but we got 1,000. We didn't actually get 1,000, we got 1,021, but 1,000 sounds like much more of an elegant number, so that's what I'm going with at the moment. All right, so the things that we found out were, some of them were predictable, but some of them actually gave us a surprise, sometimes for the better and sometimes with a little bit of dismay as well behind that. So just to have a quick look through it, we use a learning platform. The actual company, I didn't realise they're presenting in the exhibition here today. It's Learning, which is a Norwegian platform, and the schools created their own content and their own affordances within the learning platform. There was no group-wide curriculum or educational activities that were implemented. Schools developed the learning platform to suit their own individual needs, although they did collaborate and they share, and in some cases stole information from each other and resources and so forth. So they were put together their learning platforms. They all had to have their curriculum online. That was one of the imperatives. And it varied right across the spectrum, across a number of subjects and across a number of year groups. And primarily, the types of things that they used the learning platform for were either for didactic teaching, for actually top-down, teacher-driven material, or independent learning where kids could create their own spaces, or indeed the collaborative side, which was one I was more interested in, to see how students would work together or interact with teachers with teachers or with groups of students from other schools to see what came out of that. So there's a range of different styles and different content right across the group. One of the things that the schools had to do was to make sure that what we said was, if your school shut because it snowed, which it does occasionally in England, then would you be able to have your instruction continue across the school uninterrupted? We had only one school, which was Guildford High School, that had that situation. They closed for 4 days last year over winter, and they reported that there was no instructional time lost at all. The children went online from home and the teachers went online, and there was no instructional time that was lost. Now, this is a pretty middle-class school with parents who can afford to send the kids there, so there's, I wouldn't read too much into that. I would be interested to see in the high-rise tenement buildings in Lambeth or the building projects up in Moss Side in Manchester to see if we got similar stories up there. In terms of the response, the balance is pretty predictable within our actual school population, roughly 51% girls, 49% boys. The sample of response was skewed slightly towards the girls, possibly indicating that they like filling in online surveys, which is how this data was collected, or that they were actually more compliant, but still a skewed sample, but somewhat balanced. No surprises with the year groupings. The year groupings, if you look at year 7, 8 and 9, they're the first 3 years of secondary school, and that's where it just jumped up. You can see in the primary schools virtually no responses to the learning platform usage at all. A little bit in year 5 and 6, but not very significant. Year 7, 8 and 9 really jumped on board. Year 9 is the year when they start getting ready for the preparation for their examinations. But of course in year 11, which is where the GCE examinations are, and year 12 and 13, which is the sixth form pre-university years, it tapered off quite significantly there. In the UK, that's called Key Stage 3, year 7, 8 and 9. It makes up a particular part of the curriculum, and interestingly enough, it's a part of the curriculum that the government has particular focus in at the moment, because it's where they get a lot of their predictive results for the examinations later in the school, in the child's school life. So when we ask the students how often they use the learning platform, most of them used it at least once a week. There was little everyday usage, comparatively speaking, but about once a week was the average time that they seemed to report going online. Bear in mind, all of this data is collected from what the students are reporting. These are not actual factual logs of the time going online. And we were interested in the students' reporting of what they said, what their perception is. And I'll come to that a little later on, because there's some interesting correlation that we're going to do later on with teachers' perceptions as well. Location of usage, they reported that they mainly used it at school by a huge proportion there. Students did use it at home, but the main usage of it was at school. I suspect, and we're going to do some focus group follow-ups, discussion groups with the students from this, that it may be that the teachers actually really want to control this technology and direct the children in exactly what they do, so they're run very, very specifically as classroom-based activities, which really was not the intention of this technology in the first place. We asked the students when they used it mostly, or when they preferred to use the learning platform. Most of them, half of them couldn't care less when they used it. They just said, we'll just use it whenever we need to use it. But there was a balance between those who used it in the between the afternoon and the evening. So the usage of it as a time-stamped metric does not seem to be important for the students. Now, this is the one that dismayed us a little bit on it. We asked the students I'm sorry about that, I'll sort of need to turn it on its side a little bit, don't I? We asked them in which subjects they used it. Now, the first one, ICT, Information and Communications Technology, for obvious reasons, because it's seen as a piece of technology, still somehow it seems to be the domain of the ICT department. So unfortunately you've got this massive take-up in the ICT department and still reasonable take-up in the core subjects there, but that's highly skewed. It's interesting to note at the moment that the ICT curriculum in England is totally dysfunctional. It is completely broken and unfit for purpose. There's been 3 events that have actually validated what we've sort of known all along. The first was the Ofsted, and Ofsted is the Office for Standards and Effectiveness in Education. They're the people who inspect schools. Their report from October said it is boring, it is dull, it is an embarrassment, it is no longer fit for purpose. Michael Gove, the Secretary of State for Education, said the same thing at the technology show in London in January. And most significantly, there was a really interesting report by the Royal Society that was put out, commissioned with the British Computer Society, and it came out on the ICT curriculum. That was released about a month ago, and it's called Restart or Shut Down. And it is a report on the ICT curriculum, and it also delivers a scathing attack on the way that ICT is taught in the schools. And it says it needs to be disaggregated into computer science and digital skills and so forth. So the fact that we've got this ICT as a subject still dominating the take-up of these technologies is quite interesting. English, science, modern foreign languages, mathematics, the take-up was pretty good there. 30% of students reported using the learning platform in that area, and subjects such as history and geography, religious education and so forth, art and design, reported usage, with then tailing off in the other subjects to an insignificant dribble at the end there. So that's the subjects in which the learning platform was actually used. We asked the students what purpose they used it for. Now, the learning platform has the predictable things, as I said before, that you would get in any learning platform. It has content management, it has the ability to put information on there, to take it off, to interact, to create, to collaborate, and to share information on there. The number one key thing that students said they used the learning platform for was homework. And that just came out resoundingly, both in the quantitative data that we collected and also in the qualitative data as well. So we seem to we are again seeing the teacher-driven imperatives behind the learning platform still being dominant in this particular area. The teachers set the homework. It's a very hierarchical way of thinking, and that is the way in which the students are perceiving it as well. They did use it for collecting and organising information, sending and receiving emails and instant messages to the teachers, for filling in surveys and polls. And it wasn't until you came down to the 5th usage there, the creation of projects, that you actually get applications where the students are creating things, where they're creating projects, where they're keeping in touch with their teachers, where they're managing their own calendar, where they're keeping in touch with students, where they're discussing things, and where they are using it to link up with other content. We asked the students what the teacher's purpose was. So after saying to the students, why are you using the learning platform, we asked them, why does your teacher want you to use the learning platform? And again, it was a similar sort of story here, setting the homework, that very hierarchical approach to it. The second one was helping with revision. Revision for exams and so forth, setting assignments, marking the work, planning the lessons, telling you what you need to do, reminding you about things, all very much teacher-directed and teacher-focused activities. Not many of the students actually said, my teacher wants me to go and create something, wants me to manage this space and collaborate in some ways. So there's a piece of work to be done in unpicking that later on. The learning platform has the ability, quite elegantly, to work on a mobile platform, to be used on a mobile phone and to be used on a tablet as well as on a desktop computer. And yet the mobile usage was very, very small. The reported mobile usage was very, very small. Again, this could be linked through to the didactic teacher's approach to using the learning platform, where the use of mobile technologies in schools in the UK is still somewhat hesitant and shy within the school. British schools are still reluctant to allow students to bring in their own portable devices to hook up to the network. I'm not sure what it's like in Scandinavia, but is it the same? Yeah. So if you want to use the learning platform in a school, you're going to use it on the school-based device, and the chances are it's going to be a laptop, which will take forever to boot up, so it's not going to be a laptop, or it's going to be on a desktop PC, which will be located in an ICT suite or somewhere like that. We asked the students about the design, because you do have the ability to create your own design of the learning platform, both in terms of the layout and the aesthetics and so forth, and we asked them if they would like the ability to change it, and as you would expect, they said yes. But that actually came out through the qualitative data as well, that the students would like a greater control over the look and feel and the way in which they set up the interface for the learning platform themselves. When we asked them whether it was useful, you can see that they were completely underwhelmed to a certain extent there, but at least 3/4 of them said that it was useful to some extent, from a little to quite a lot. A smaller proportion said not at all. Okay, so there is an element of perceived usefulness by the students, again, probably related through to fulfilling the requirements of the teacher rather than the creation of something themselves. When we asked them if they enjoyed using it, how enjoyable it was, again it was a meh type approach to it. Yeah, whatever. But quite frankly, if your main usage of a piece of technology is going to be doing the homework, it's hardly something that you're likely to get really excited about, isn't it? Yeah. In terms of ease of use, no problems at all with the interface there. The ability to negotiate the technology did not seem to, from the students' report, give them any difficulties at all, and they were able to manage that without any difficulty at all. We asked the students a really important question for us, and that was, to what extent does your carer, does your parent or the people who look after you at home, to what extent do they engage with the space, and to what extent are they able to see what you're doing and talk to you about it? And they reported very little usage at all. And even though there's the ability to have students set up accounts for their parents to have a look at what they're doing, there's very little uptake on that. So from our perspective, that imperative from the government that teachers should be able to, parents should be able to see what's going on, is not being fulfilled here. And there's a big piece of work that we need to do in terms of rectifying that situation. We did use some concordancing software on the students' responses, and the children talked a lot in the qualitative data about the learning platform. And we said to them, what are the best features? What do you like about it the most? What are the things that are good about it? And they spoke quite a lot. Although the word nothing did crop up occasionally. So. Yeah, but you can see again, homework was just, again, dominating that whole particular landscape. Homework and work being two very strong performative words there, but the word teachers popped up, and the context for that was the ability to communicate with the teachers, to be able to ask questions outside of school. And when we actually dug into this, and when we said, well, actually, what do you mean by doing your homework, we found that a lot of teachers were running clinics after school in the evenings where they were available online to help the students with their homework, and that's actually where some of that data was popping up. So the ability to communicate with their teachers outside of school was a really positive thing, and actually made that homework agenda a little bit more interesting than we first thought it was when we first looked at the data. We asked them which subjects did you find it most useful in. Now remember, we said earlier on which subjects do you actually use it in. This is saying in which subjects is the learning platform most useful. Again, dysfunctional ICT came out on top, and modern foreign languages actually moved to the next highest level there, with English, maths and science coming out of that. And when we've had independent inspectors look at the actual quality of the material on the learning platform, the quality of the material in the modern foreign languages area was the highest, and for some reason Spanish was a really strong focus. It was being especially well used right across the board in the teaching of Spanish in both the schools and the academies. We asked the students what could be made better about it. What are the things that you don't like about the learning platform at the moment, and how can it be improved? And they came up with a whole bunch of aesthetics. That was the main thing they wanted to do. They wanted to change the colour, they wanted to make it easier. Some of them said they wanted games. Well, that's not going to happen. But, you know, they wanted a greater ability to chat. They wanted the ability to interact with people a little bit more on there. So that needs a little bit of unpicking as to if those things can be addressed or not. So to summarise some of the things that sat underneath it, when we looked at what the girls' responses were and the boys' responses were, there was no real statistical difference between the boys and the girls on the use of the learning platform. Most of their usage was during the first 4 years of secondary school. They used it once a week. Few students used it on the mobile devices. They found it easy to use, and they found it most useful in ICT, modern foreign languages, English and mathematics. The last one here is sort of the recommendations that we've come up from it. We need to do greater penetration into the use of the primary school, or at least need to look at why it's not being used in the primary school. So if it's not being used in the primary school because it's not relevant and because it doesn't add any value to the primary school or elementary school, then that's good and fine. But if it's not being used because the teachers aren't picking it up and championing it and promoting it, then we need to do some work there in terms of professional development. The usage of the learning platform is dominated by a few subjects. Again, maybe that's the same reason. Maybe it's not appropriate for use in some of the other subjects, but we certainly need to find out what's going on in the minority subjects, because there may be some professional development that can go in there to assist teachers in identifying the resources and activities. Really would like to see some of the more creative elements used in the learning platform. Really need to lift the bar a little bit in terms of the expectations of teachers and how they promote the usage of the learning platform. I mean, we don't want to appropriate children's out-of-school technology for educational purposes necessarily, but we do want to set our sights a little bit higher on the horizon with respect to the way in which they use it. What else are we going to do there? We need to look at ways of engaging the parents. That was part of the reason for getting this wretched thing up and running, was to get the parents involved, and we need to address that because the parents aren't involved, and we need to know why and what we can do about it. The next stages, we have just finished conducting, well, we're going to run the reference groups, little focus groups for the students to find out a bit more information about the way in which they're using it. We're also going to run a teacher's survey asking similar questions from the teacher's perspective. Again, we're not actually looking at logging people's usage, even though we could do that. We're asking about perceptions. I want to see if there are any crossovers between what the teachers are saying and what the students are saying, so that there are better ways in which we can put this thing together. So I'm quite interested in other ways in which we can improve our usage of the learning platform. Schools are certainly, students are going to encounter it when they come to university, and before we write this off or before we invest in it too heavily, we need to know a little bit more about what's going on. So if anybody's got any research that they've done or anything they'd like to share, I'll be really happy to hear from you. Or if you'd like some more information about our research, we'd be happy to share it with you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the... Yeah.
Actually, I have a few comments there. I share quite a lot experiences with what you presented here. I mean that maybe it comes first with sort of carriers or parents' involvement in this one. I attended quite, I think, 5 times this sort of parenting meeting with at school there. And we thought that, to my knowledge, 2/3 of parents are not that capable of managing this sort of the ICT stuff at home. They consider like we have a few neighbors there, and we talk to them, and they said, "Okay, we did not know how to do this." That's what I would consider as the main problem with them. So this is why usually, they want their children to set up this access all the things for them. I thought it would be one of the reasons that, or in this case, the way to do is to give parents more training.
Yeah.
Sort of that this is, and the other things that from your presentation, my feeling is curriculum development is dominating the whole thing. So would not give a good impact or really try to see how the learning platform will be used for supporting the sort of the learning process like that. And the learning platform is still used as a sort of the means of communication. I think would be the main sort of use of that. So this is just my comments there.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you very much. On the last point, I agree completely. With this being a curriculum-driven thing rather than a process-driven thing, I think this is vexatious, and I think it's actually possibly related to your first point, where many parents will, number one, be reticent about the technology, but even more reticent about the curriculum and about education generally, and feel that that's a domain that they're not invited into and they don't feel welcomed into. And in fact, these sorts of things can actually exacerbate the problem rather than make it better. So some sort of a portal which was more friendly and more invitational to the parent, which maybe pushed out information to them and drip-fed them information in the way that Facebook maybe does, would possibly be more useful than something that they actually have to physically go to look at. But we've got when we're looking at parental attitudes and surveying the parents on this. Some parents do want to become actively engaged in their children's education, but some of them, when it comes to this, want hands off because they're a little afraid. Maybe they've had a bad experience themselves, or it's a place that they don't feel comfortable in. Or the other ones who say, I'm paying my taxes or my fees for you to deliver education to my students. That's your problem. It's not my problem. You deal with it. And that's a response that you get from your middle class parents as much as anybody else. So yes, I think there's a piece of work to be done around this, and I want us to look at evolving more process-oriented ways of interacting both with the students and with the parents. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. If there is anybody. Yep.
Yes, I have a question about computers. Do they have access to their own laptop in most schools in Great Britain? Or I know in Sweden it's increasing, very quickly, that more and more municipalities actually provide students with, especially in secondary school, with their own laptop. So that makes it, of course, more available, the learning platform.
Yes, no, that's a very good point. The previous government which put a lot of funding into this, had the directive of a one-to-one relationship so that there would be one device for every student. Not necessarily exclusively attached to that student, but just on a basis of a ratio. And that may be made up of laptop trolleys, of ICT suites and so forth. The problem that we've got with laptops in the schools now is that they take so long to authenticate against the network and to boot up. So you're losing, and also to get out of the trolley and so forth, so you're losing 5 minutes at the beginning of the lesson, 5 minutes at the end of the lesson. So the laptop agenda is changing in the UK, and there is a greater movement now towards at least thinking about the bring your own device, so that children who've got the powerful devices in their pockets can bring them to school and authenticate against the networks that way. That is problematic in its own right, because there's still those people who've got this view that everything should be filtered, and how do you control this in sort of some sort of way. So there's a fear factor that's involved with that. One of the interesting things we did in another study was do a survey of both our independent schools and the academies from two different socioeconomic levels, and the amount of personal ownership of ICT was no different. So that a child who lived in a very socially deprived area was just as likely to have an internet-enabled mobile device as a child was in another area. We're just not making enough usage of those sorts of things. Yep.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Okay,
Albin Wallace. Speaking about laptops and computers, I think I've never seen such a connected audience before.
They're all on Facebook.
Yeah, I think you have been listening though, and I think it goes with the theme of the conference. So this is the end of this first session, this first day, and we will welcome you back tomorrow for the conference. So thank you.